President Biden jetting off to vacation as his lackeys are left to clean up yet another huge mess. In a classic holiday news dump, the administration releasing a report giving Biden a free pass on his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan and blames it all on his predecessor, of course. The president couldn't be bothered to answer questions. Biden sent John Kirby out for an embarrassing news conference while he snuck away to Camp David for some R&R. The liberal media is furious after only getting a 10-minute heads up on the bombshell release. And it looks like they're having a hard time spinning it.
The word mistake appears once in this 12-page report. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said they were going to do a hot wash. This 12-page document is a whitewash. There is, it is narrative. It is light on specifics. It's devoid of citations.
There's considerable frustration that some people at the department think they're not being honest.
The White House needs to take responsibility for what happened in August on its watch, over which it had control.
The father of a Marine killed in the Kabul airport attack agrees.
You're the president of the United States. The buck stops with you. It's your responsibility. Stop making excuses.
The fall of Afghanistan has marked a dramatic drop in Biden's support, which to this day has never recovered. And now a stunning 67% of voters say Biden doesn't deserve to be reelected. Okay, Jesse, I'm going to start with you. The truth is that his numbers, and we talked about this yesterday, have dropped. They have never recovered. But when Kirby came out yesterday, he said that he was proud, and there was one thing that I found very disturbing. He said that he was proud that they were able to get out of a defunct airport. And I thought to myself, you made the decision to exit Afghanistan, not out of Bagram, but out of a defunct cosmopolitan airport in the middle of 4 million people.
He's never had to answer that question, Joe Biden, about Afghanistan. If I ever had him in the room, I'd say, why are you proud of that disgraceful exit? Why did you check your watch when you were watching the coffins come home at Dover? But, Judge, he hasn't been asked anything. The man is terrified of reporters. He triggers a raid in Mar-a-Lago, and then he leaves on vacation. He blames everything for Donald Trump and then leaves on vacation. COVID, the border, the spy balloon, everything's Trump's fault. If you could get the guy alone in a room, he would melt down. Just simple questions. He wouldn't be able to answer these questions. You said you had no idea what was going on in China, but your family's getting millions from the country. Why'd you say that? Do you have confidence in your vice president? How many times can the guy just lie and then leave? I mean, I would ask him this. Why'd you say the Chinese spy balloon wasn't a major breach, and then they sucked up all of our intelligence? I mean, what is your plan for the border? Do you think that women should be able to play in men's sports? Did the Keystone workers that you fired ever find jobs building solar panels? Did you ever make Jill Biden sleep on the couch after she called Hispanics tacos? I'm just kidding about that. But all the other questions are legitimate questions. And the White House and the White House press corps has this fraudulent arrangement where they allow the president of the United States to never answer a question. And that's why this guy is a fraudulent president. Because if you ever put me or Brett Baer alone in the room with the president, he would break down.
Why are you dragging Brett into this?
Because he would never do an interview with me. Brett's more of a serious Fox News anchor.
You know, Jillian, one of the things that is true is that the press was upset about the fact that they got the Afghan report 10 minutes before the briefing as they saw the president's motorcade leaving the White House to go to Camp David. You know, you have been in this world for a long time. I mean, even the press is upset, in addition to a lot of Democrat congresspeople, people in the House and the Senate.
I think that the problem, Judge, with the report is actually a lot bigger and broader than the optics associated with yesterday, which were terrible. Like you mentioned, reporters getting this a couple minutes before the briefing started, so they had no time to even read it before they were in front of the press secretary, despite the fact it was also issued basically as the president was leaving for the weekend. That's all problematic. But the bigger problem is that this report was really a decoy. It was designed as a decoy. What really happened yesterday is that the Defense Department sent an after-action intelligence report classified to the Senate and the House, committees that oversee defense issues, to explain their assessment of what happened during this time when we withdrew from Afghanistan. Because there was no unclassified version available yesterday to release to the American people, to release to the media, the White House drafted this 12-pager. The National Security Council wrote it and laid out, again, the Biden administration's sort of talking points, their case, which we don't need to hear. We have all heard it 17,000 times since the tragic events happened. So that's really what happened yesterday with this report. It was ill-conceived, it was ill-executed, and then the timing could not have been worse.
Well, you know, there is some sound that I'd like you to listen to, Lawrence, on the Marine who told lawmakers that the leaders ignored the warnings of the imminent suicide bomber.
Over the communication network, we passed that there was a potential threat and an IED attack imminent. This was as serious as it could get. I requested engagement authority while my team leader was ready on the M110 semi-automatic sniper system. The response, leadership did not have the engagement authority for us. Do not engage. Plain and simple, we were ignored. Our expertise was disregarded. No one was held accountable for our safety.
And the truth, Lawrence, is that the families of the 13 service people who were killed have never gotten any answers.
And they still want answers. I think the sad point here is Kirby, the admiral, he knows better. He knows better. He was in the Pentagon when they were advising the White House that this is a bad move. This is going to be catastrophic. He was also at the Pentagon as this all goes. So all these stories and tells, he already knows all of this. This is him being forced into a role. Jesse calls her Binder, because Binder couldn't do this press conference. She wouldn't be able to do it. So they sent him out there, and he had to cover the White House instead of what he knows from his experience being there. You can go through all the sound from back when he was the spokesperson for the Pentagon of him saying that it was a disaster, that they warned the White House. You can go to the testimony there.
So then you're saying that Kirby was not being honest with the American people?
He was totally lying there, and I think they did him a disservice by sending him out there.
Or did he do himself a disservice by going out there?
Well, he answers to the commander-in-chief, but the commander-in-chief won't answer to the American people. He sends his aides out there to do it. I think that's who we should be upset about, is the president refusing, yet again, to answer questions from the press. And I think that the press is getting tired of it, but then we move on to the next scandal, and they let him by on that scandal. Again, the press can't be mad now because they allowed the guy to be in the basement the entire time. How many press live shots did I do outside of Joe Biden's Delaware house, begging him to come out and talk to the American people? So again, they can't be mad now when they allowed the guy to do this through an entire campaign. And now they're suddenly upset that he won't speak now that he's the president of the United States. He's doing what he got elected doing.
Presidents have spoken, I just dawned on me when Lawrence was talking, presidents have spoken from the White House podium when fewer Americans have died. The president could have spoken yesterday himself directly.
Yeah, and you know, Jessica, the truth is that we left Americans there. Blinken says that several Americans remain detained by the Taliban. The Biden administration admits it left hundreds of Americans in Afghanistan, and we've had to have Pineapple Express and not the American military help Americans out. I mean, the whole thing is a disaster.
I would not disagree with you. I haven't since it happened, and there are a lot of Democrats on record talking about it, especially combat veterans, people who were over there themselves, and people who, for instance, worked with these incredible folks who risked their lives to be interpreters for us, to fight alongside us. And then their visas couldn't be sped up fast enough, and they were left behind. There's something outrageous like an 18-year backlog to do this. I think a lot about how important and what a special class veterans are in this country, and they should be in every country, but they deserve to be treated differently because they're willing to sacrifice their lives for us. And that's something that's emphasized in every administration, how special these people are. And in thinking back to how angry people were, myself included, that President Trump wouldn't address veterans who were angry with him about mocking John McCain, like a Khizr Khan type of person, right? And we said, you should always talk to these people, because if they've got something to say, they know more than we do about these issues, these people who are Gold Star families, et cetera. And I think that Joe Biden owes these people that respect, to talk to them, to face them, to address the American public about it. And he did, in a speech, say, the buck stops with me about those 13 service members who lost their lives. But this certainly was an opportunity, and I don't begrudge him going to Camp David for Easter break. That's a silly semantic.
I begrudge him for not answering the questions. And also, he has this weird thing that he does, and he did it when we lost these 13, that he took it back to Bo. We have all lost family members at some point in time, but you don't get to invoke your dead son to use it as cover when you're addressing a travesty that you caused. Yeah, he does. He does it all the time. He does it all the time. Anytime there is a national tragedy, he says, I understand because I lost a son.
Yep.
No, you don't understand. You put their lives in danger. And I think that's what the people want. Sometimes you got to take the L as the commander-in-chief. And he hasn't been willing to do so. And it was a disservice to send Admiral Kirby there, who was there trying to facilitate a lot of this stuff. It would have been a disservice to send Karine Jean-Pierre, even though she's the press secretary. Go face the American people yourself. Be a leader.
He has trouble doing that.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.